Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode number 51 of the BS Machine. And on this episode, I have got a very interesting and very cool guest on for you guys today. And I'm actually super excited to have Dr. Sarah Jane on the show because, one, she's a network chiropractor, which a lot of people don't really know too much about unless you've seen the Goop with Gwyneth Paltrow. But also, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see Dr. Sarah Jane, and she's quite something to look at. So you wouldn't expect you wouldn't expect her to be changing lives and doing the things she's doing just from from an outside perspective. But I've been to see Dr. Sarah Jane myself, and it was quite impressive. So, yeah, I wanted to get her on because she knows shit that a lot of us don't know, and so I wanted to get you on and have a little yarn with you, Sarah Jane. Welcome.
Tommy, I don't know about that. I'm pretty sure I forced you to have me come on as a guest because I said to you I'm cool enough. So I'm very happy that you added that I'm cool in that little wrap up there. But no, I'm
Well,
just loving what you're doing and how it literally is just so authentic and honest. And yeah, like how could I not want to be a part of that? So thank you for having me. And yeah, I'm excited to chat about a few things and I guess clear up some stuff about Network Chiro in particular and give people a little bit more of an idea about the actual science behind it as well. And it's actually an incredible modality with a huge amount of research that backs it. So it's pretty incredible considering a lot of the woo-woo stuff, for lack of a better word, doesn't really have that kind of, I guess, science backing it. So that's one reason why I love it. But also I love it because you can't deny it. It's so tangible on the table at the time, like you would have experienced. And so even someone who I guess is a non-believer or a skeptic of energy, it really changes their whole belief system about what energy is. So it's actually a huge privilege to work in this field.
yeah, I bet, and that's you know what? Even before we get into the science of it and all that type of stuff, it'll be actually cool to hear. Well, not in like a boring way, but more so it'd be cool to hear how someone like you got sort of interested in this type of work first, and how you fell into it. But then also, I guess, for someone like you who works with the network Chiro and things like that, it's a type of modality that you see. Like if you've seen it on YouTube or seen videos around it, and people go, yeah, whatever, as if that's fucking happening. So what's your how did you sort of fall into it? Were you like a normal chiropractor and then found this, or what happened with you? How did you fall in?
Yeah, I fell in a crazy way actually. So I was finishing my psychology degree at Deakin. That's where I was kind of headed. I loved just learning more about human beings, why we are the way we are, and I guess I always had that spiritual side to me. I loved learning a lot about Eastern religions. So in my first degree, I did a double major in psychology and philosophy. So learned a lot about Hinduism and Buddhism specifically. So I always had that spiritual side to me. But I was a fashion buyer at the time. I'm very
Fashion
creative.
buyer.
Yeah, I
What
was.
the hell?
I know. I come from a really creative family. My brother's an artist. My sister was a photographer, and so we have a really creative design instinct in my family. And
Was it
I
like
love fashion.
Burberry or like Coco Cabana or whatever the
No,
fucking
it was
things?
a surf brand that
Surf
I won't.
brand.
Oh, yeah, surf brand. It was
Yeah.
very cool.
Mm.
So was the women's wear buyer, and I loved the whole thing about fashion, but I really didn't like how there was a lack of meaning. And this was a long time ago. There's more ethical brands and things going on now, but back then it's all about making money and what the masses wanted.
Mm.
So I was a bit bored on my lunch break one day and got onto Seek and typed in the keyword search meaningful because that's what I was looking for. And the only job that came up was for a network chiropractor as a practice manager. So I had no idea what it was. I'm like, what's a chiro? Are they like a physio or osteo? What's that? anyway, applied. She rang me that night. I went down there and I got the job. So just fell immensely in love with the work she was doing and the lives that she was changing on not just a physical level. Anyone who's had physical pain would understand how life-changing that is, but emotionally is huge. It like mental health, just, it's got a huge effect on, and spiritual happiness. So for me, I couldn't deny it. And the movements, I was like, what is going on here? I need a session. So I had a session and like I felt it and I was like, oh my God, what is this? I have to do it. So I went back and studied chiro. After that, my intention from the start was to be a network chiropractor, which can make the double degree a little challenging at times. It's a very, straight, narrow-minded kind of philosophy there, but finished that with distinction. So I did applied science, clinical science, then got a scholarship off to India, travelled over there for a bit. And I just finished a postgraduate study in humanistic Buddhism, which I got a scholarship for that as well. So I do love the whole rational mind and that all making sense, but I love the spiritual aspect. And like you said, a lot of people don't believe the movements they're seeing. I post quite a lot of videos as well, and I get some remarks going, are you teaching people to do these moves? It's hard for us to fathom what's happening there in terms of our bodies releasing this tension. But yeah, network was it after that, and here I am.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because because one of the key things with network chiropractic, which I felt as well when I had a session with you, was for me, it was more of an emotional release. And it was, like you can't deny that you start to, on the table, you start to feel those movements moving through the spine, and it's more about letting go. But at that time for me, I remembered that a lot of the things in my life were around just letting go and letting the flow happen. And I was so against that happening, and it was like, and I remember through that session that we had and feeling my body just wanting to move and flow. And part of me was like, no, like I need to keep control here and not let it do that. So for me, it was a real eye opener afterwards, because after that session, I started seeing all the different areas in my life where I needed to let go and emotionally. So for me, it was a big emotional release more than anything else. But I did feel physically how it freed up the body, and it's so it'll be with network chiropractic and normal chiropractic, right? If I was to go see one after the other, what would be the difference?
Yeah, so I guess they're still chiropractic techniques only because they're working with the nervous system, and that's what chiropractors do. They work with the spine and the brain, but that's about as close as they get, really. So traditional chiropractic, it's amazing, but it's got a manipulation associated with it, and within that manipulation, they're altering the alignment of the spine. So they might discover that there's a certain vertebra that they feel is not moving as well as they would like it to. That can therefore block nerve interference and create other health things, or such as nerve pain or physical pain. But that's kind of where their philosophy predominantly is. They're pain relievers. And it works in that regard, especially if it's a physical issue that's creating it. Whereas in my kind of world, I'm much more focused on the emotional health, which is kind of what you were experiencing, and teaching more life lessons and spiritual lessons to the human being. So like you were experiencing, it can teach you the art of surrender, which you can then apply to your life and can then have a different kind of, look and perception about life. So we're looking for more that kind of meaning change. However, we are still altering the nervous system, but we do it in a different way. We do it in a way where we do these really gentle touches that the body then, with its innate wisdom that it already has, then the body itself does that unwinding through the movement. That's why people feel the need to move. It's that system that's telling it to unwind, and therefore it can relieve things like physical pain and stuff like that as well. But predominantly my focus is spiritual and emotional health, but they do work quite well together. But for me, I prefer to honour the system and have the system unwind the tension rather than me particularly, changing it from my end, if that makes sense.
Totally, absolutely. And you know what, just as you're talking, it's not even when because a lot of people don't meditate, but If I'm sitting still, and this is actually how I started getting into meditation, is because I just thought, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to stay still for 5 minutes. And after a while, I felt that there was this left to right movement within my body, and I sort of just let that go. And I find that if I totally let go in a seated pose, or usually in seated, I can straight away feel this left to right movement, with really subtle movement of my spine. And it's like,
It's the same thing. It's the same intelligence, Tommy. So people who meditate or do quite a lot of yoga or breath work, those things which are connecting the mind and the body, that perception, they can, connect to network much quicker and faster, because it's that same brainwave state that we come into, where the body comes into this gentle movement, whether it's side to side, up and down. That same innate unwinding is just what we're doing on the table, but to a little bit more of a larger level.
Yeah.
But exactly like you were saying, people who meditate can really understand it. And this type of chiro is referred to as the yoga of chiropractic.
Yeah.
For a reason. And that's why I get a whole bunch of, like, a lot of my clients meditate already, or are yoga teachers, like yourself. And it makes my job a lot easier. Otherwise, what I'm doing at the start is spending a lot of time on getting that perception back, that mind and body connection back. And I'll have people doing this on the table who don't have a large perception, and they'll be like, I'm not moving. And I'm like, you are. I can't even tell. That's the disconnect. They're like doing this. I'm like, I can't feel anything, So at the start can be just connecting them back into their body and creating safety back into their systems. Whereas, you and yourself, you already had that safety there. So we're just creating a little bit more adaptability and flexibility in the body, because you are holding on to this kind of belief. And as we do that, it just alters the whole system, which is, it's incredible.
Yeah. And I love, even just talking to you, Sarah Jane, like, listening to your voice and the way you talk, you're so fucking confident, like you no, honestly. And it's this level of self-confidence where you have this thing where you know your shit, and you just want to get it out to the world, and get people to experience it, which is quite powerful, And so is the way that you, like, let's say, for example, if a person came in that's totally overweight, they've got body issues, and they've got body pain, and emotionally they're totally fucked up. They're in their head. They're scared of everything around the world and all the shit that's going on right now, and they don't know what to do, and they're constantly in this place of not understanding why they're experiencing what they're experiencing. If they came to see you, what would be your first port of call?
Look, for me, I always try to get down to the root cause of things. So for me, even if that person walked into my door, number one, they've walked in my door for a reason. I know that they want to be there. There's something within them that says, I want this work. So I already succumb to that. I don't try to prove the work to them. I don't try to prove myself as a practitioner to them. All I try to do is open their mind and create ease within their system, so they're open to receiving. And another thing that I do is try and get to the bottom of it. So for that instance, probably self-worth is a huge reason as to why there's quite a cascade of events happening in their life. If we can improve their self-worth and realize that they're a person who's worthy of being loved in this world and worthy of showing up in this world as who they are, and there's contacts in Network Chiropractic that revolve around that idea and that mindset. And also I do kind of, work in a different way to just specific network. All networkers do. You end up creating your own kind of system. So I do quite a lot of energy work off the body as well, which is deeper soul level work. And the quicker I can get them to that, the quicker we can change those limiting beliefs that they've had probably from childhood, and just get them being who they really are. That's what's so incredible about this work. I don't treat it just as an alignment of the spine, of the brain, of the nervous system. I treat it as an alignment back to their soul blueprint, who they were meant to be on this planet before they were told who they were meant to be, and let go of all this shit that they've been carrying for way too long.
So around self-worth, where is that based in the body?
So self-worth based in the body is usually in the lower back area. So people who do have consistent lower back issues without maybe a physical cause as such, or sometimes it grows to a physical cause. But if there's quite a lot of hip pain, lower back pain, even sometimes neck pain, it can relate to insecurity, instability, and just feeling unsafe in the world. And that lack of safety doesn't allow the person to feel confident or feel worthy of showing up as themselves. So we tend to work with the coccyx bone, which is our tailbone, which, even in an animal, so to speak, if they're scared, frightened, anxious, they tuck their tail under. I actually find that in human beings, it's a similar thing that happens. So we work with lifting the coccyx bone and also releasing a part in the brain. So a neck region just here that calms the system down, calms the brain down, and calms that monkey mind down, so they're not just stuck in this trap. So by doing that, you change the physiology in the system. They feel calmer, lighter, the thoughts get, less, and they just feel more confident. So that's where we kind of work with in that regards.
Yeah. And you reckon you can get all that done in one session?
No. I'm
It's
not
like,
that
fuck
medical. But they will notice something.
Yeah.
They will notice a change 100% after one session. And that's why I love this. You don't have to commit to me for 7 months and then we decide if it works for you or not. You will notice a change after one session if this work is for you. That I make that my goal, and everyone notices something. By about 3 sessions, we're starting to teach this body like a new way of being. If you think of like neuroplasticity in the brain, for example, we're kind of doing that with the nervous system. We're giving it a new pathway to change, and it takes time to create that new pathway. But eventually we can make it just as strong as the other one.
Yeah. And how come breath is such a prominent part of what you do when you get on the bed? There's a breathing technique that's part of it too, isn't there?
Yeah, breath is a huge part. If we're not breathing, we're dead, So breath's pretty important, but also a lot of people, especially now, I'm finding they don't breathe properly. They're very shallow in their breath, very short, very fast-paced breath. But, so if you can just change the whole system through breath, as anyone who's into like Wim Hof and breath work, which I know you are, Tommy, you experience the change that breath work can do for you. It takes you to a different level of consciousness. So if you combine that breath work, like we call it SRI, which is somatic respiratory integration, with this work, it's phenomenal. And it just increases the changes and also the lasting changes for people. We're integrating it in the system rather than just coming to me. I do a session, you feel good for a bit, then you go, then you have to come back to me. It's really not what I'm about. I want your body to alter and integrate this work so that you can have this life that you require with or without me.
Yeah. And that's the thing with breath, isn't it? Like I found with some of my clients where if we're doing yoga or breath work or whatever with some of my clients, that even with something as simple as taking a big breath in and letting the breath out, like let's say if for me, like I'm quite comfortable doing intense breathing, like but people, most people, even that in itself, they can't fucking breathe. Like even it just taking, they're like, what you, what? How do you? I'm like, dude, just fucking breathe. Like, what are you doing? And they've got this incredible barrier to letting go and just opening yourself up. And that, for me, sometimes I find that frustrating because I'm like, you fuckwit, just fucking breathe. Just stop it. It's inherently, you've got this gift already of breath. And it's the pathway to so many different things, And so I'm assuming you would see that too with your clients, where some people you just come in and you're like, you don't have to just breathe or just let go or whatever it might be.
Yeah, 100%, especially at the start, So a lot of the time, like you said, they just aren't even aware that their breath isn't as deep. So it can be literally me coaching during the sessions. Within the energy framework, you're feeling this movement slightly in your system. So I always say, if you can feel it a little bit, breathe deeper and you'll feel more energy. Then people get excited and they want to breathe deeper so they can feel more. But also we do group sessions. And in our group sessions, you've got other people in the room who are doing all sorts of sounds, all sorts of movements, all sorts of breath. And it just gives people permission to make sound and to take space. Like a lot of people don't breathe properly because they're frightened of making the sound or, people might think they look weird or whatever it might be. But a lot of it is subconscious belief about how we should behave. So even on the table, I have to encourage a lot of people at the start, like, please move. If you feel something, don't hold it in, because I can see them like holding it. I'm like, just let it out. And whereas, what's really interesting, children, I never have to say that to.
Yeah, they're just totally there.
They just breathe. They just breathe and they're doing whatever. Whereas, adults or even children from about the ages of 10, that's when you start getting that social construct. I want to fit in. I want people to think I'm cool. I want people to think this of me. Don't want to be different. So sometimes it's just giving people that safe place to realize, no, this is actually encouraged. It's not even just welcomed. And I always say to people, you're here. If you want to commit to this work, you need to play full out. You need to commit to the breath. You need to commit to the movement. You need to commit to the emotion, whatever you're feeling, because it's your journey and you're here because you want to change or you want something to change. So you have to work with me on it,
And in terms of change, what would be what would be one of the biggest standout changes you've seen in either one of your clients or maybe when you started your working as the practice manager early on before you even started doing the work yourself? What's one of the biggest things you've seen, biggest changes you've seen in a client, and you only get one?
Oh.
Only one.
Ooh. I can't really say one specifically because it's too hard. It's such a complexity of work. So I can say, I have had people who can't, sleep, can't sit on the toilet, without doing this. They can't move their arms, their legs at limit. They can't play with their kids, and then they can. We have people who are suicidal, addicted to all sorts of drugs, eating disorders, who actually, in line with other sources as well, can feel safe not to do those behaviors anymore. We have people where anxiety is crippling, or depression's crippling, they can't get out of bed, and then all of a sudden they realize, okay, I don't want to live this way anymore. There's so many different things, but even, small changes like people quitting a job that they fucking hate, that they all relate to the same thing, and it relates to people being who they are meant to be on this planet. And that's the main thing. Like it aligns them. So, the work that they don't love, they can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
They choose to eat better food because they understand the value of who they are. They don't eat shit anymore. They spend less time with people who drain them instead of who uplift them. They have different friends. They change in so many aspects, and it all comes down to, I guess, that soul alignment and being aligned with who they really are. And that's what's such a, like I said before, a privilege to work with people in that.
Yeah.
The more we are ourselves in this world and happily ourselves and content and just good human beings, the better the planet is, the better our relationships are, the better for everyone. And it's very inspiring work.
Yeah. I mean, that's obvious, isn't it? And when you talk about energy and you're talking about, because when you just talked about energy, then part of me wanting to know, because if you watch, some of Dr. Sarah Jane's videos on Instagram, you see sort of people moving around, and or people on the bed are sort of moving around, their spines are moving around, and you're basically just there moving your hands around, just gently touching points on the body, and then up and down and whatever. Is it, is the energy that you're working with, is it something you have to learn how to feel? Is it something that you see, or is it like Reiki energy where it's like in terms of the chakras, or how is it for you? I mean, what is it? What are you actually doing?
Look, energy is energy. So I guess there's a whole different schools of thought that relate to it. Some people call it chakras, some people call it meridians, some people call it chi, some people call it kundalini energy, but we're all kind of working with a similar kind of field of energy. Same kind of stuff, just in a different way.
But how do you feel it, or do you see it, or what's the deal with you?
I feel it, but I wouldn't be opposed to, say, someone else saying that they could see it more than feel it.
Yeah.
But it's important to know that everyone could do this work. I'm not special. It is a trained work in the sense that at the start I couldn't feel much, to be honest. I was like, I think I'm doing it. I'd feel a tiny bit. But like anything, the more you do it, the more you can feel it, and the more sensitive you become to it, and it becomes, easy. But also the more work you get yourself, the more it's easier to feel on other people's systems as well. So it becomes part of your life. You couldn't do this work and not get this kind of session yourself. It just wouldn't work. So you just encompass yourself into the energetic field, and you can feel that the field doesn't end here on our physical body. The field's larger than that, and that's why I can access the points off the body. And people are like, "Wow, how are you doing that? You're not even touching that." And I'm like, your energy field doesn't just stop with your physical system, and you know that. So that's why I can access it off the field. Energy is larger than just the end of our skin.
And
so
is this the type of work that can be done remotely?
So I'm kind of developing that at the moment. That's my next phase. I want to be able to give this to as many people as possible. And so to be able to serve more, I have to kind of figure out a way to do it online. So that's what I'm doing right now. It's part of we did a trial on 50 people on Friday night, actually. And even I was surprised at the responses that people were getting. I thought, oh, maybe distance wouldn't be as powerful, you know. But especially was for people who had already seen me prior. So what I'm trying to work out now is a way for someone who hasn't had this work at all before, for their body to respond. So leave it with me, Tommy. I'm coming up with it.
Do you know what? Well, I can tell you when I was a Reiki practitioner a few years back, and I was doing that for 3 or 4 years, and I actually did a similar thing where I got like 10 people and to do distant Reiki healing on them, and out of the 10 I got 3 like epic results. Like this one chick had she just had jaw surgery, and I spent and she couldn't, there was so much pain in her jaw, and I remember I did distant Reiki, like she was in, I don't even know where she was, but it was over Zoom just like this, and I was working with her jaw, eyes closed, like just working it the same sort of way, almost imagining she was on the bed. And since that day, she's had no pain in her jaw. And part of me was like, are you full of shit? But then I had 2 other wins, and I was like, okay, cool, this should obviously work. So 100%, I think it'll definitely work for you. No questions. That'll be epic.
Yeah, I think it does. Like, I think it's again just that releasing that belief that it doesn't work because they're not in that proximity in front of you. But energy doesn't work that way anyway. No. You know. So there's no reason for it not to. I'm just coming up with a way myself so that everyone can get those results. So for me, I think we had 50, and about 30 were like, yeah, I felt so much. And then I don't know, the other percentage were like, not really.
Not really, yeah.
So I'm like, okay, how can I encompass it so everyone has an experience? So until I get that, I won't be releasing it. So, but I'm writing a course, a certification at the moment, to learn the other energetic stuff that I do, which should be out by the end of December. So if my time frames work, so we'll see about that as well.
So cool. Is there anything you're not doing?
No, not really. If you know me, you know I kind of work at 100 miles per
100
hour.
miles an hour, yeah. And you know what? On that, what do you reckon has been the biggest change you've seen in yourself since you've been doing this work?
In honesty, I think it's.
And by the way, you're not allowed to give me a fluffy answer.
No, I won't give you a fluffy one. So, probably the largest one is that I actually am, like, it's not an act in terms of my comfortability with myself. I really am truly comfortable with who I am. And what you see is what you get. And I actually really am comfortable with that. You know, I don't have to put on an act, put on a front, like this is my work hat, this is this hat. It's the same person everywhere that you get, whether you're a friend of mine, whether you're a client. And I really am comfortable and happy with who I am as a person. But probably the largest thing is when I have had some traumas go on in my life. It's really been a saving grace in the sense of some stuff that I don't think I would have made it through as gracefully or as easily had I not had this work in my life. You know, a couple of years ago, my mum became brain damaged. she was fine, healthy, and then 24 hours was in a coma and was in ICU for about 4 months. And she still has brain damage now and lives in a nursing home, which is still very challenging for me. But I don't think I could have processed it and welcomed the lessons had I not done network in a way where I was in a centered space and able to understand, bigger life lessons that, we all will end up leaving this planet. We're more than the physical realm, all those kind of things. And network has helped me, I guess, adapt to changes out of my control a lot quicker than maybe had I not experienced this work.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's a.
But like you said, we control everything, so you can't do that on the table. You just can't. You have to let it flow. You just have to, or it doesn't give you the same sensation. So when you apply that to life and lessons in life, it just makes the human experience a little bit more flowy, less resistant, and you can enjoy it a bit more.
And speaking of the human experience, and with all the stuff that we're sort of going through at the moment around the world, with the way you look at the world, I mean, where are we going to end up, do you reckon?
Yeah, there's a few different ways, I think. My hope is, especially in Melbourne, we've been challenged quite intensely down here. We've never had so much time to reflect on who we are, our relationships, our work, everything, and just reassess life. So for me, I actually think Melbourne will end up being quite a spiritual centre, because that whole dark side of the soul, or spiritual emergency, however you want to call it, we've had to delve really deep down here, and that can only produce beautiful results for a lot of people. So I think we'll end up, everything changes. This won't be like this forever. It's hard at the moment, but just as it came, it will go eventually.
Yeah. And what I mean, but diving into a little bit more of the human experience, and not just even in Melbourne, but just all around the world, there is, because what I'm experiencing at the moment is that there's so much fucking fear, and there's so much, there's so many things around making decisions to go one way or go the other way, and everything is heightened at the moment, like 20 or 30 fold. And then on top of that, there is this feeling with that I'm hearing with my clients and just mates and whatever else, where it's being forced to make decisions on certain things, and I'm not talking about vaccines and all that type of shit. I'm talking more about just life in general. Like, obviously that's happening on a bigger spectrum, but I also get that's happening on so many people's lives at the moment, that they have to make decisions based on one way or another. And it's almost like we've got all these ultimatums that are around us at the moment. And so I think with the work that you do, how can that, and not just network chiropractic, but how can what you do and what you offer help that type of situation?
Yeah, it can immensely. Like, we are offering a place of safety for people, a place of certainty for people, and a place for people where, not that it doesn't exist, but a place where there's a bit of an escapism, and that they can, take themselves out of the fear-based scenario, because the fear is what perpetuates all that. There's a fear. And also there's quite a bit of childhood trauma being reignited as well, if I'm honest, because that lack of control and authority kind of pushing on people. A lot of people haven't had that feeling as an adult for a very long time, and it takes them back into that powerless childhood state. But what we're trying to do for people is bring them into this state of peace, regardless of the external. Like, that's what spirituality is all about, really, isn't it? It's finding that center and that peace, regardless of what's happening in that external form. And that's not to say that it's easy and simple, but to have that tool where you can actually still realize that you can be happy and content within yourself and internally, despite all this chaos going on around you, is a really beautiful gift for people right now. And, you would have experienced through meditation and yoga as well. You forget about all that noise. It becomes a quiet connection between you and something bigger and something outside of all this shit that we're experiencing at the moment. And the more you connect to that, the less you connect to the fear and all the other, stuff that's going on at the moment. So that's kind of what I guess I'm holding for people right now, which is, again, a privilege. I'm so lucky that I can work right now.
Such an honor,
and
isn't it?
help people. Oh, it's incredible. It's the heck step was worth it for 5 minutes in that regard. But people, when they're in fear, don't make great decisions, as you know. Like when you're scared, the brain can't actually function properly, and you're just in this weird little chaotic environment. So we try to bring people out of fear so that they can make better decisions. But also there's this idea around like things will either be good or bad based upon this decision, and it's just not true. Things will be magical if you choose this, and things will be magical if you choose that. If you believe that you can make something despite any decision, you'll be a lot more quicker to actually make them, and a lot less indecisive that something bad will happen if you choose one way, and something, you might miss out on something great if you choose the other way. It's not a healthy way to make, choices in this life from that mindset.
Well, even on childhood trauma, people are so scared of exploring trauma as a child. And obviously, people have been through some pretty hectic stuff when they were kids, but trauma doesn't have to be that drastic. I mean, me personally, I quite often, when I'm experiencing something in life at the moment, I always try and do a little tune in and see where that seed was popped in. And just recently I did one where I did a tune and I got this memory of when I had my first ever shower when I was like a little kid. And basically the first ever, because I always used to have baths, right? And
I still have baths. I love baths.
I know, yes, and but the first ever shower I had, it was like, Dad put me in the shower, right? And I was like, no, I don't like this, because the water was coming down, and I tried to get out, and Dad pushed me back in. It's like, no, you're getting in the shower. And that to me was such a traumatic experience that it seeded all this stuff in my life at the moment where it seeded this thing of like, I'm not capable to do my own stuff. Like I don't have the capacity to make decisions because I'll just be forced back into the fucking darkness, And so it's interesting when you realize that, people really fear diving into what happened when you were a kid. But once you become aware of it, it's so powerful, because then you're like, hang on, that's actually not true. It's just, if you look at it from a higher perspective, Dad was just trying to be a caring father, going, dude, stop being a little dumb shit. Just get in the fucking shower. Just, you'll be all right, And he wasn't trying to cause me trauma. He was just trying to get me used to having a shower, And so...
Poor little Tommy.
I know, poor little Tommy.
In the shower.
Yeah, but I think it's really cool because on with what you do and people are on the table, I'm sure that they would get, trauma trying to bubble up, and they're like, oh, no, let's not. But you have to let it out. I mean, I just think tears are one of the most powerful and release of emotion, however it wants to express itself out of the body. Man, it's like, getting rid of disease in the body.
Oh, it's incredible. And this idea that we have to hold stuff, we just carry it for so long as well. So when you realize you don't actually have to do that, and like you said, you feel it physically within you, so you almost have to relinquish that control to let it go. So you have to put it down. Yeah. You have to put your little backpack down, and just teaching people and facilitating that is really life-changing in itself. But like you said, trauma is, I guess, a bit of a loaded word at the moment as well. But it doesn't have to be this huge thing like you've gone to war, like people imagine. All of us have traumas, and it's not necessarily on this scale of this, what everyone would perceive as trauma. Trauma is literally something that's happened against your will, that was over your capabilities to be able to process at that point in time, and it has a huge emotional reaction to it, or emotional charge to it. That's what trauma is.
Yeah.
Your system was overwhelmed at the time, your choice was taken, and you had a large emotional charge towards it. So that's how the brain processes it. There's a great book, The Body Keeps the Score, if people are interested in it, by Bessel van der Kolk. And he talks about how trauma stores in the body, and like big traumas and little traumas, and why rationale doesn't necessarily work. Like, as a kid, I know Dad just wants me to have a shower, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't store in this way of how the body remembers something, that was quite traumatic for you, and can therefore outplay in other areas of your life. Your brain and body will associate anyone trying to push you towards something as your beliefs and what you felt was right for you at the time have been taken. So it's quite an interesting thing, but I do encourage everyone to kind of look into the root cause of why they're doing things, and try to go a little bit deeper and be like, where did this start? Where did this belief come from? Because it can be, really freeing for people.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And even with that memory, just as you were talking, I had another experience where I used to go away on this ski camp to Czechoslovakia, because we lived in Hungary, and and my skiing coach got drunk one night and kicked the living daylights out of me. But but the shower was a way more traumatic experience for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But that's interesting, isn't it? You wouldn't think rationally that makes sense, would you? But
no. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, it just is what it is. But yeah, it's so cool just chatting to you. And so wait, your clinic is if you're in Melbourne, Australia, your clinic is in Armidale, and it's called...
Correct, Tommy.
Yeah, it's
you
called...
should know.
I know, been there. My dog pissed all over your... My dog Chili pissed all over your...
Oh, Chili peed on my couch. I can't believe that. Lucky it's cute.
I know. See, it's called Enlightened if you're in Melbourne, in Armidale. But otherwise, you can find you on Instagram, which is also... Oh, it's a hard one.
Enlightened. Dr. Sarah Jane Chiro, I don't know. Put it up, Tommy, because
I
can't remember what I am.
That's all right. I'll chuck it in the...
Put in Dr. Sarah Jane Chiro, it should come up.
No. I'll put it in the podcast notes. But it was so cool chatting to you, Dr. Sarah Jane.
Oh,
Such
that sounds
name.
so wanky, Tommy.
What do people...
Dr. Sarah Jane.
Dr. Sarah. What do people call you? What do people call you?
SJ.
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 I like it. So SJ on the BS machine, rocking it. And you know what? One more question I've got for you, which I usually ask quite a few of my guests, is a lot of people do look up to people like you and people that are so passionate about the work that they do. And I always like to ask people just to, it's not even bring them down a peg, but also just to see their true, that we're all just human beings, I mean, where would you say in your life, SJ, that you have the most growth to do?
Oh, oof. So many ways, and just to touch on that, I am exactly like you said. I really try to work really hard to not have people place me on any form of pedestal, or that I'm doing something special for them, or I've done this for them, because it's just not the case. I'm literally just a facilitation of something that you are doing. This work does not work without you participating in it and taking, that huge role. So for me, I'm growing every day, just like everyone else. Probably right now for me, career is going well, but there's other, personal relationships and things that I'm wanting a little bit more depth to and difference to. And, you know, I'm assessing my life just like everyone is currently right now. And, you know, yes, I'm passionate about what I do for work and I guess my purpose in life and why I'm here. And I'm very, you know, lucky that I found that, because I didn't have that for a while. So, you know, every day that I am, you know, as long as I can talk about this subject, I will, until something else ignites my passion. But, you know, like everyone's got stuff, everyone's working on it. For me, at the moment, you know, I quit my master's this year, and just trying to make some choices to not run at that 100-mile speed all the time and just take care of myself a bit. You know, I've reintroduced yoga at least 4 times a week. I'm walking, I'm eating better, just little stuff like that I couldn't do when I was working huge hours, which I still do, if I'm honest, but yeah. I've made self-care a bit more of a priority this year. And, you know, also not having to have all these things to be a worthy human being as well. I've let go of that idea as well, which at least for now, but I'm sure it will pop up again at some point in my life. That's being human, isn't it?
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thanks, SJ, for coming on the BS Machine.
Thanks for having me, Tommy. I'm glad I forced you into it.
Yeah, me too. And yeah, I'll put I'll put everything in the podcast notes of where you can find SJ, Dr. Sarah Jane. And yeah, if you get a chance, do go see her, because it is a very, very cool experience. And yeah, she's you know, one of the things I really respect about you is that you just have such a deep care for your clients, and I think that's really hard to come by. You genuinely want people to experience how epic this work is, and I fucking love your face for doing that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that does mean a lot, actually, because you know, everyone who comes in that door is part of our family, and that's the be all end all. You know, our door is always open. My phone is always on. You know, some would call that a lack of boundaries, but it's a family, and a lot of people haven't had anyone deeply care for them in this life. And if I can provide that for someone, then I've done my thing on this earth.
What a great way to finish.